Hi, I'm Zoe. This is Frag, breaking down the giants in our personal lives.
Hi, Zoe. Welcome to episode number 23.
Today we're going to focus on something that's very deep. Rekindling siblings.
Whew, this is a heavy subject for me, and the reason why is because of a quote that I'm sure somebody planted inside of me during my early teen years when they said that family is one thing. A group of people you're born into. You don't have a choice as to who is going to be your brother or your sister or even your parents. So when you choose your friends, choose wisely because you're going to surround yourself with friends for the rest of your life. And that's how I've lived my life. It's the further I got away from my family, the better I was.
Brothers and sisters fight all the time, but there are ways to rekindle your relationship. Sometimes fights can go on for 5 minutes, whereas others can go on for 5 years. No matter what you are both going through right now, it's important to rekindle your relationship.
No. I get it. I think that the relationship that I've had with my sister is based 100% on reaction. We say and do things to get a reaction, not realizing how deep the wound really is and how we are infecting old wounds. And so what's happened is that as we have rekindled our kinship, it's based on one thing. Watch what you say. Be prepared for moments where I'm going to say, I don't want to go there. And you have to learn how to respect that position in thinking as well as activating.
Step 1. Forgive and move on. Forgive him or forgive yourself and move on. Remember that you are both different people now. Appreciate each other for who you are today.
You know, for many years, decades, we thought moving on was letting go. There was no reason to even have any type of connection. And the reason why was because we had our own families. And then you realize that there's something internally connected between the two of the siblings. And so as you try to build your own personal life, something is missing. The needle in the haystack. The connection of growing up with parents that you liked, you loved, you hated, you disagreed with, and those little things that nobody in your present world would ever understand, but your sibling does because they lived it with you. And so learning how to forgive and move on doesn't mean letting go. It means continuing to build that relationship one-on-one as you get into your later years.
Compromising is similar to keeping open communication. It's extremely essential in every relationship. Regardless of age, it's important to meet in the middle about things in order to remain close.
I think our biggest problem, and we are not the only family that went through this or will go through this, is that the youngest in the family wanted to be heard. Yeah, my sister and I, we're the youngest in the family. Everybody else was getting what they wanted, what they needed. They were growing well beyond high school and getting into life, and we were still stuck inside the four walls of this house. And you struggle to be heard. And as we finally made it into the real world, what happened is that the circles that we kept, we became very protective. But the circles that we had as kids, it didn't matter anymore because we were in a world where we knew that we were going to be heard by our friends and family of a new generation and not that of the generation that we came from.
Resolve previous conflicts. Even if a fight has been carried through years, and it wasn't even your fault, approach them and ask to resolve previous conflicts. If there is something that is bothering you or if they annoy you, tell them straight on. Don't pile up the conflicts.
I'll tell you what our weakness is that the forgive and forget. She's trying to forget, I'm trying to forget, but yet we know that it still remains. And you're right, don't pile up the conflicts. But the problem, I think, in this situation and the scaredy cat moment or those areas that you don't want to enter belong to two separate lifestyles. Where she lives in the past is talking about everything that happened in the past with mom and dad, and she doesn't want to talk about the real blood donors, those that created us and things like that. Whereas I want to move forward. I don't want to talk about the childhood. And there's such a conflict there because she wants to be heard. We talked about this. She wants to be heard. I want to be heard, but we've got to meet in the middle. And I like your suggestion. Don't pile up the conflicts because they do pile up. And all of a sudden, the slightest thing causes a little distraction in the relationship. And suddenly then there's silence again. And this time, how many years or decades will it go?
It's tempting to involve your friends or maybe even your parents, but what goes on should stay between you. Try not to involve other people in your conversation or your arguments because it can just be fuel to the fire. If things get out of hand or messy, make sure to contact an outside party to intervene.
I'm guilty of that. Because I'll openly admit that it was my first wife that generated a lot of the negative energy, and there was no forgiveness whatsoever in anything that took place during those 12 and a half years. And now that I'm in this present life where I've been married for 29 years, sometimes I feel when I'm sharing the story between my sister and I with my present wife, it feels like my wife is taking her side. But what she's really trying to do is she's trying to get me to understand her side of the path. Being one who wants to be heard, I sometimes don't accept that. And it's like, okay, why are you always taking her side? And you're right, it's fuel to the fire.
Ultimately, if you guys don't pinpoint the cause of the fights, you will not be able to be civil with each other. Find out what events or actions trigger the two of you to fight, and rather than bicker or point fingers, celebrate the differences between you two and come to understand why you fight. If you can figure out the triggers, you can prohibit future arguments.
See, this is the reason why I defrag. I keep a daily defrag journal. And the reason why I created this podcast or this episode is so that we can openly discuss what is going on in scenes on the planet that people don't want to speak of. You don't talk to your sister anymore? Well, why? We just don't. Or last night I was in a conversation and someone says, you're going to talk to your sister on the way home tonight, right? I said, yeah, I am. We've made that our nightly ritual, that we're going to spend a few moments together. And I think that one of the triggers is that we wouldn't talk to each other, and in our own personal lives, it would just boil. They didn't call me today. Oh, do you know how long it's been? Well, my philosophy has always been, why do I always have to be the one that makes the phone call, right? You know what I mean? And so I did that when I moved down to the Carolinas from Montana, because I thought, why am I always the one that's footing the bill when it comes to paying for long distance charges? This is back in the 1980s when you had to pay for long distance. And I said, sometimes they got to call you and take care of their side of the bill. And so little things like that triggered us. But now what triggers us is the fact that it's like, okay, you've said enough about this. We can't go on. I'll give you a good example. Members of my other family, my real father, the blood father, had a lot of children. They're reaching out to me, and my sister, who came from my family, said, don't bring it up. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to have to deal with it. Don't bring it up in the conversations. So I don't. But what happened last night on the drive home? She brought it up. So I had to make that physical choice of, I'm going to listen to her side of the story to see if she's been triggered or if I'm going to be triggered. And then you take baby steps to try to find that healing, because we never really got to meet our father. Susan and I both have that one thing in common. We didn't meet our father, whereas these other children, they knew him quite well.
See what I mean? Your one common ground is not knowing your father. Never stop understanding each other's personal feelings in this situation. It is a trigger that deserves to be respected.
Defrag. It's so simple to do, yet it's very difficult for so many to even attempt one page. Being open and honest with yourself on that page. To ask yourself questions. Don't run to somebody seeking answers, because you hold a lot of experiences and the answers are inside those experiences. But you've got to take the time to listen to yourself. And when it does get tough or tougher, then you reach out to the professionals and those around you. But remember, one thing I learned from Julia Cameron, you never let somebody in your family or a friend read your creativity or listen to your music. You don't, because they're going to give you an opinion that you don't like, and that's going to hurt even worse. It's like adding fuel to the fire, like Zoe said. Defrag. You know, I put in maybe 2-3 pages a day. They're just questions, and sometimes those questions can be really stupid and awkward, but it doesn't matter. It's you having a conversation with yourself about the situations that you face on a daily basis, or it's been going on for a very long period of time. Defrag.